Ohio is in the midst of a historic drought, with 22 counties declared federal disaster areas. 77% of Ohio is currently in a drought condition, and a quarter of the state is in extreme or extraordinary drought, the worst drought situation since the US Drought Monitor map was created in 2000. I talked about that with Ty Higgins from the Ohio Farm Bureau.
It affects all farmers, but it affects them differently. And I can tell you that when it comes to our row crop farmers, talking about corn and soybeans, that harvest started a month to maybe 6 weeks early because the rain wasn't there and the crops died off. And it was just time to go and harvest those crops. Unfortunately, the yields aren't going to be nearly what those farmers are used to. We're talking 50% or more less than it was just last year for those corn and soybean crops. So that's how it affects row crop farmers. Livestock producers, which when you get into the southeast part of the state, big livestock part of Ohio, those farmers are having to take some pretty drastic measures. They cut hay in the summer to feed in the winter. They had to start feeding that winter hay in August because the pastures were dried up and there was no forage for that cattle. They even have to truck water from off the farm to the farm because their springs and their wells have dried up. So it's impacting different farmers in different ways, but no doubt that all farmers across the state certainly being challenged by the drought of 2024.
And we're also seeing, like, Columbus is starting to use some of its reserve water supply because that's what's available. There just hasn't been enough rainfall to reinforce that water supply.
Yeah, and you don't have to go very far from Columbus to see these challenges in rural Ohio. Licking County and Pickaway County, some of the hardest hit that we've seen on the drought monitor that are in central Ohio right now. So certainly challenges for sure, but there are things out there to be able to help farmers get through these challenges, at least in the short term.
I want to ask you about that, but what are the effects that we consumers are going to see? You said that the yields are going to be smaller, they came earlier. Are we going to see higher prices? Are certain things just not going to be available?
Well, it's interesting because people like to correlate the price of their groceries to the farm. It's not that easy anymore because of everything that happens between the farm and the grocery store. Inflation is one of the reasons we're seeing higher prices at the store. Everybody knows that. But look at everything else that costs more to get that food from the farm to the grocery store. And I'm talking about transportation and labor and processing. The reason I bring that up is because farmers aren't price makers, they're price takers. They give them what the market bears. And right now we're seeing the same price for corn that we saw in 1974. So farmers aren't making as much money as people might think because food prices are higher. There's a big disconnect there. And really that adds insult to injury. We're seeing lower yields for corn and soybeans, and we're seeing prices from 50 years ago. It's really a tough time for agriculture. And so to talk about the consumer and how they're going to be impacted, sure, there will be some impacts down the road because of what's happening now. But really it comes down to what's happening between the farm and the grocery store as to why we're seeing those higher prices now. Really, as far as what we might see in Ohio, agriculture is our #1 driver of the economy. So when farmers are challenged and not doing well, our economy is not going to be doing as well.
What will it take to end this? I mean, steady rain for a couple of days, months. What's it going to take to get back to where we were before all this started?
Let's put it in perspective. We're about 7 to 10 inches of deficit for the year in rainfall. That's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen in a week. It's not going to happen in a month. It could take until next spring to really get us back to the levels of moisture we need. And we need it because if we don't see that moisture and we're dry again in the spring and we plant into that dry and those tough conditions of soil, not going to be a great crop again next year. We're going to need to see a lot of moisture here as we get into fall and even the early part of winter.
So what resources are available, state and federal resources are available to farmers who are dealing with all this?
Yeah, so again, it depends on what you do in agriculture. So getting to the row crop farmers, talk about things in the Farm Bill. So the crop insurance program, commodity programs, safety net programs, things of that nature will help those farmers, again, not become whole, but help them get some of the losses they have seen because of the drought. Much like you and I buy insurance for our car and house, they buy insurance for their crops. And when something catastrophic, God forbid, happens, they have to take out policies on those particular crops. For the livestock, not quite as easy as a process because they don't have parts of the Farm Bill that the row crop farmers have. That's why we have disaster assistance programs, and 22 counties in Ohio have been declared disaster by USDA, and 16 contiguous counties across the droughty part of the region that we're talking about now also available for those programs. So those are low interest loans that farmers can take out and try to get back some of the losses they've had here in the short term, whether that's equipment or hay or feed or the cost of transporting that water from the fire station to the farm, if you will. Some of it is just disaster programs that farmers can take advantage of if they've had dry pastures or if they've had to haul water to kind of recoup some of those losses. So again, depending on what you do in agriculture, the programs are there. But the best thing you can do, the first thing you can do is contact your farm service agency. Every county has an FSA office. Call, make an appointment, go into FSA and find out what programs are there for you. Not a one-size-fits-all approach. There are about 10 to 12 different programs that farmers can look at and figure out which one could work for them to get them through these challenges.
You mentioned the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill has a deadline of September 30th. Is it going to happen? Is it going to be agreed upon and go forward by September 30th, or is there going to have to be a continuing resolution?
In our opinion, it has to happen. Look at everything that's changed since 2018 when this Farm Bill was enacted. We had that wet spring I mentioned. We had the pandemic. We have inflation. We have a war half a world away. There are so many things that have changed since 2018 where this current Farm Bill just does not make sense for what we need in the agriculture space. Not to mention, 80% of the Farm Bill is for food nutrition programs. A lot's changed in our society on that front as well. We need to make sure we update both the food and the Farm Bill before the end of September because it's important and vital to keep our farmers sustainable in more ways than one for as long as we possibly can.
The Farm Bill used to be something that was pretty much agreed upon, that went through no problem, and now it's become it's been held hostage in a way by what's been happening politically. Is that has to be a concern for you?
Sure, and it's something that has happened over the last few years without a doubt. You mentioned it. It used to be a bipartisan bill. Didn't take much effort to get the Farm Bill through because they understood the importance of it. Now it's being used as that political football. And someone said it best last week, we can't keep kicking the can down the road because there's not any road left for the Farm Bill. It is time to get it passed. Not just a continuing resolution. We have to get a brand new 5-year Farm Bill that matches up with the times that we're in right now.
The Ohio Farm Bureau Federation has also endorsed the 3 Republicans running for Ohio Supreme Court, saying they have an understanding of the state constitution and how it affects agriculture. But the Farm Bureau says it's a nonpartisan organization, and the fact that all 3 Supreme Court candidates who've been endorsed are Republicans is a coincidence.